The engine hummed. Tires met asphalt. It was just another night. The open road stretched out before me, a black ribbon under a sky full of stars. My headlights cut through the darkness, my only companions the rhythmic wipers pushing rain aside. I was used to this, the solitude of the late shift, the quiet murmur of the radio my only solace. Tonight, though, something felt different. There was a weight in the air, a heaviness that seemed to press down on the car, on me. Maybe it was the storm brewing in the distance, flashes of lightning illuminating the sky, or perhaps it was the call I'd received just as I was clocking out, a request for a last-minute delivery. Whatever it was, a shiver ran down my spine, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was heading towards something I didn't understand. I knew this route like the back of my hand. Winding roads, once charming, now felt oppressive. The old Victorian houses, usually quaint, loomed like watchful giants. Shadows danced within their darkened windows. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white. The GPS blinked, directing me further and further from the city. The houses thinned out, giving way to overgrown fields and dense, whispering woods. A chill ran down my spine, a prickling sensation at the back of my neck. This delivery was taking me far off the beaten path. The rain intensified, hammering against the windshield. The wipers struggled to keep up. Visibility was decreasing rapidly. I considered turning back, the thought of abandoning the delivery tempting. But something, a strange compulsion, urged me forward. Doubt gnawed at me. This was just a job, a simple delivery. Yet, the further I drove, the more I felt like a fly caught in a spider web, pulled inexorably towards an unknown fate. A lone street lamp flickered, casting long, grotesque shadows. Below it was my destination, a dilapidated mansion at the end of a long, overgrown driveway. Its silhouette was an ominous shadow against the stormy sky. The house was dark except for a single faint light emanating from an upstairs window. Pulling up to the curb, I reached for the package sitting on the passenger seat. It was surprisingly heavy, wrapped in plain brown paper and tied with thick twine. No return address, only a name scrawled in black ink. The name sent a shiver down my spine. It was barely legible, but it seemed to whisper, "Harbinger." I hesitated, my hand hovering over the package. An unsettling energy seemed to emanate from it, a palpable aura of dread. The air grew colder and the hair on my arm stood on end. What was in this package, and who was this harbinger? Despite my better judgment, I found myself stepping out of the car and into the pouring rain. The package felt heavier than it should, like I was carrying more than just an object. I was carrying a sense of foreboding, a growing certainty that tonight, this delivery, would change everything. Rain lashed against my face. Wind howled through the trees. I clutched the package, its weight unsettling. Each step towards the house felt heavier than the last. The driveway was long, shrouded in darkness. The flickering street lamp did little to pierce the gloom. Shadows danced around me, twisted shapes born of the storm and my growing unease. The air grew thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something ancient and unpleasant. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a drumbeat of apprehension. As I approached the house, its true size became apparent. It loomed over me, a decaying monument to a forgotten era. The windows were dark eyes, watching my every move. The wind seemed to moan around the eaves, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. I hesitated at the foot of the steps leading to the porch. The house seemed to pulsate with an unseen energy, a palpable aura of malice. What had seemed like a simple delivery now felt like a grave mistake, a journey into the heart of darkness. I climbed the steps, each creak echoing in the silence. My hand trembled as I reached for the rusted iron knocker. It was cold beneath my touch, sending a shiver up my arm. Taking a deep breath, I let the knocker fall. The sound seemed to reverberate through the night, amplified by the silence that followed. I waited, my heart pounding in my chest. Minutes ticked by, each one stretching into an eternity. The house remained silent, watching me with its empty windows. Just as I was about to knock again, I heard it. A faint sound from within the house. A floorboard creaked. A low murmur, like voices whispering in the distance. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it sent a chill down my spine. Someone or something was inside. I held my breath, listening intently. The sound came again, this time closer. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, descending a staircase. A sense of dread washed over me, cold and suffocating. Then, a voice. A raspy whisper, barely audible through the heavy door. "Who is there?" It was a voice tinged with age and something else, something unsettling. It sent shivers down my spine, raising goosebumps on my arms. I hesitated, unsure how to respond. "Delivery," I managed to say, my voice barely a croak. The words seemed to hang in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Silence descended once more, broken only by the pounding of my own heart. Then the sound of a heavy bolt being drawn back. The door creaked open, revealing a sliver of darkness within. I stepped back, my pulse quickening. What awaited me on the other side of that door? The door creaked open slowly, revealing a dimly lit foyer. Dust motes danced in the single ray of light spilling from a flickering gas lamp on a far wall. The air inside was heavy, thick with the smell of decay and something vaguely sweet, like overripe fruit. I held my breath, my senses on high alert, fear a cold knot in my stomach. The voice came again, closer now. "Package." "You have it?" The words were raspy, strained, as if spoken by someone struggling to breathe. I took a tentative step inside, my eyes struggling to adjust to the gloom. The floorboards groaned under my weight, the sound seeming to echo through the cavernous space. "Yes," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. I held out the package, hoping whoever or whatever was on the other side would just take it and let me leave. But as I stepped further into the foyer, the oppressive atmosphere seemed to cling to me, suffocating like a shroud. The air grew noticeably colder, raising goosebumps on my arms. The hair on the back of my neck prickled, as if unseen eyes were watching my every move. I felt a presence, something ancient and malevolent, lurking in the shadows, its attention fixed solely on me. "Closer!" the voice rasped, a demanding whisper that sent chills down my spine. "Bring it closer!" I hesitated, my gut screaming at me to turn and run. But my feet were rooted to the spot, frozen by a fear so profound it bordered on paralysis. Slowly I moved deeper into the foyer, my eyes scanning the darkness, searching for the source of the voice. The faint light from the gas lamp did little to penetrate the gloom, leaving most of the room shrouded in shadow. But as I approached a grand staircase, I saw it, a figure silhouetted against the dim glow. It was tall and thin, almost skeletal, draped in what looked like a heavy dark robe. I couldn't make out any features, only the vaguest outline of a hooded head, tilted slightly as if studying me. My heart hammered in my chest, a frantic rhythm against my ribs. A cold sweat broke out on my skin. "The package," the voice whispered again, closer now, the sound emanating from the figure on the stairs. "Give it to me." I took another step, my hand trembling as I extended the package towards the shadowy figure. The air crackled with unseen energy, thick with anticipation and dread. As I held out the package, a strange thing happened. The silence, which had been so heavy and absolute, was broken by a new sound. It started subtly, a low murmur, like wind rustling through dry leaves. But it quickly grew louder, morphing into a chorus of whispers, swirling around me, seeming to emanate from the very walls of the house. I couldn't make out any distinct words, only a cacophony of voices, high-pitched and guttural, pleading and threatening, all vying for my attention. I stumbled back, my senses overwhelmed, fear gripping me with icy fingers. The package slipped from my grasp, falling to the floor with a heavy thud. The shadowy figure on the stairs remained motionless, its attention seemingly fixed on the fallen package. But the whispers intensified, swirling around the package like a vortex, their tone becoming more insistent, more desperate. "Heed them not!" the raspy voice from the stairs commanded, cutting through the cacophony. I stood frozen, caught between the shadowy figure and the swirling whispers, paralyzed by fear and indecision. My eyes darted from the figure to the package, my mind struggling to process what was happening. What was this place? Who or what was this figure? And what did these whispers want? The whispers reached a fever pitch, a symphony of disembodied voices swirling around the fallen package. I watched in horrified fascination as the brown paper began to tremble, as if something inside was trying to break free. The twine snapped, unraveling with a sharp hiss. The shadowy figure on the stairs leaned forward, its attention now fully on the package. "Do not be afraid," the raspy voice echoed through the foyer, a strange comfort in the chaos. "It is what was destined." A blinding light erupted from within the package, momentarily illuminating the foyer. The whispers ceased abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence. I shielded my eyes, my heart pounding in my chest. When I dared to look again, I gasped at the sight before me. The package lay open on the floor, its contents revealed in the dim light of the gas lamp. But it wasn't an ordinary delivery. Nestled inside, glowing with an ethereal light, was a human skull. Its empty sockets seemed to stare at me, a silent scream etched upon its bony features. Nausea welled up in my throat. My legs trembled, threatening to give way. The skull pulsed with the same strange light that had illuminated the package, casting grotesque shadows that danced across the walls. The air grew thick with the scent of ozone and something else, something metallic and cloying, the unmistakable stench of death. The figure on the stairs descended slowly, each step deliberate, measured. As it moved into the light, I could make out more details of its form. A skeletal hand gripping a gnarled walking stick. A long, flowing robe that seemed to absorb the light around it. At last, the figure rasped, its voice closer now, filled with a mixture of relief and something else, something akin to hunger. "It has returned." I stumbled back, my pulse quickening. Fear coiled in my gut, cold and suffocating. "What? What is that?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. The figure stopped at the foot of the stairs, its empty sockets fixed on me. "Silence," it commanded, its voice sharp, piercing. "You are but a vessel, a means to an end. Your purpose is fulfilled." The figure turned towards the skull, its skeletal hand reaching out to caress its smooth surface. "Now," the figure continued, its voice taking on a pleading tone. "Bring it to me, and be released from this place." I hesitated, torn between the figure's command and the primal instinct screaming at me to run. The skull seemed to pulse with a life of its own, its ethereal glow intensifying. The air crackled with unseen energy, a silent storm brewing in the heart of the mansion. The figure's words hung in the air, a chilling command that seemed to paralyze me. My feet felt rooted to the spot, my body refusing to obey the desperate pleas of my mind to flee. The skull's glow intensified, bathing the foyer in an otherworldly light that seemed to dance and shift, casting flickering shadows that writhed like living things. I watched in horrified fascination as the figure, its skeletal hand trembling with anticipation, reached toward the skull. The air crackled with static, a low hum vibrating through the house, seeming to emanate from the very bones of the mansion itself. A cold sweat slicked my skin, the taste of fear bitter on my tongue. My breath came in ragged gasps, each inhale a struggle against the oppressive atmosphere that seemed to press down on me, suffocating me. "Take it," the figure rasped, its voice a low hiss that seemed to slither around the room. "Take it, and be done." But I couldn't move. I was trapped, not by physical restraints but by the sheer terror that held me captive. As the figure's skeletal hand hovered inches from the skull, the whispers began anew. This time, however, they were different. Gone were the murmurs and pleads, replaced by a chorus of agonizing screams that seemed to claw at the edges of my sanity. The sound was deafening, a cacophony of torment and despair that reverberated through the house, shaking the very foundation. It was the sound of countless souls trapped in an abyss of suffering, their cries for release echoing through the ages. I covered my ears, but the screams pierced through my defenses, assaulting my mind with their raw, unfiltered agony. My vision blurred, the line between reality and nightmare blurring into a terrifying kaleidoscope of light and shadow. "Ignore them!" the figure commanded, its voice strained, as if struggling to be heard above the din. "They have no power here. Bring me the skull." But the screams intensified, their anguish palpable, their despair suffocating. The mansion itself seemed to react to the Symphony of Screams. Dust rained down from the ceiling as cracks spiderwebbed across the walls, the structure groaning under the weight of unseen torment. The air grew heavy, thick with the stench of decay and the metallic tang of blood. The floor beneath me trembled, threatening to split open and swallow me whole. I stumbled backward, desperate to escape the nightmare unfolding around me. The gas lamps flickered violently, casting grotesque shadows that danced with the frenzy of a macabre waltz. The screams reached a fever pitch, an unbearable crescendo of pain and suffering that seemed to warp the very fabric of reality. The skull's glow intensified, casting long distorted shadows that writhed and pulsed with the rhythm of the screams. "No!" the figure roared, its voice a guttural growl of frustration and rage. "It is mine! You will not have it!" The mansion shuddered violently, the walls groaning in protest as if straining against an unseen force. The screams reached a deafening crescendo, a vortex of raw agony that seemed to warp the reality around me. The air vibrated, growing heavy, and a high-pitched whine pierced the air, making my teeth ache. The skull pulsed rapidly, its light blinding, and for a terrifying moment I saw my reflection in its smooth surface, my face twisted in a silent scream. Then, with a sound like tearing fabric, a fissure ripped open in the air above the skull. It started small, a thin crack in the veil of reality, but it quickly widened, becoming a gaping maw of swirling colors and distorted shapes. The screams intensified, now emanating from the tear itself, a chorus of tormented souls reaching out from beyond. The figure, its skeletal hand inches from the skull, hesitated. Its empty socket seemed to widen in surprise, then narrowed as if in defiance of the chaotic energy spewing from the tear. "No," it rasped, its voice barely audible above the cacophony. "This is not your domain. Be gone!" But the tear continued to widen, the mansion groaning under the strain. Dust rained down from the ceiling and chunks of plaster fell from the walls, revealing the rotting timbers beneath. The air grew thick with the stench of ozone and decay, the taste of copper heavy on my tongue. Through the tear I glimpsed a chaotic landscape of fire and shadow, a swirling maelstrom of tormented souls trapped in eternal agony. Grotesque shapes flitted in the chaos, their forms constantly shifting, their eyes burning with an unholy light. A wave of raw power rolled out from the tear, slamming into me with the force of a physical blow. I staggered back, my stomach churning, my mind reeling from the sensory overload. The screams intensified, morphing into a singular, guttural roar that seemed to shake the very foundation of the house. The figure, its skeletal form illuminated by the otherworldly light, turned towards me. Its empty socket seemed to burn with a desperate intensity. "You," it rasped, its voice a strained whisper against the roar. "You can close it. You have the power." Fear warred with a strange sense of responsibility within me. I was just a delivery driver, an unwitting participant in a nightmare that was spiraling rapidly out of control. What power could I possibly have over this chaotic breach between worlds? The figure, sensing my hesitation, reached out a skeletal hand towards me, its bony fingers trembling. The skull, it rasped, its voice urgent. Place it within the tear. It will seal the breach. It is the only way. I looked from the figure to the pulsating skull, its glow now blindingly bright. The screams from the tear seemed to echo within my very soul, a chorus of torment urging me to act, to end their suffering. But a part of me, a primal instinct for self-preservation, screamed at me to run, to escape this madness before it consumed me as well. The fate of the mansion, perhaps even the world beyond the tear, seemed to rest on my decision. The weight of that responsibility, the sheer impossibility of it all, threatened to crush me. I was caught between a force of unimaginable chaos and a figure shrouded in darkness, each offering a path forward, each more terrifying than the last. The choice was mine, but what choice did I truly have? The weight of the decision pressed upon me: run or face the unknown. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The screams, the chaos, the sheer terror of it all threatened to shatter my sanity. But in the heart of that maelstrom, a strange calm descended. I looked at the skull, its ethereal glow illuminating the crumbling foyer. What was it about this artifact, this fragment of a life long gone, that held such power? What forces had I unwittingly stumbled upon in this desolate mansion? There were no answers, only the echoing screams and the figure's desperate plea. A sense of resignation washed over me. I was in too deep. Whether by choice or circumstance, I was now a part of this nightmare. And maybe, just maybe, I could do something to end it. With trembling hands, I reached for the skull. The details are a blur, a whirlwind of sensations, of fear and adrenaline and a strange sense of detachment, as if I were watching myself from outside my own body. I remember the feel of the skull in my hands, surprisingly warm, pulsing with a life of its own. I remember the searing pain as I touched it, a jolt of energy that coursed through my veins, leaving behind a trail of fire. And then, silence. The screams abruptly ceased. The tear in reality flickered, the chaotic landscape beyond it fading, shrinking until it was nothing more than a shimmering scar in the air. The figure stood motionless, its skeletal form illuminated by the fading glow of the skull. The mansion was silent, the air still thick with the stench of decay, but the oppressive weight that had pressed down on me was gone. I stumbled back, my legs weak, and collapsed against a wall. I looked down at my hand, the one that had touched the skull, and gasped. A burn mark, a perfect imprint of the skull, seared onto my palm, a permanent reminder of the night I stared into the abyss. They never found the figure, nor any trace of what had transpired within that house. The mansion stood for another year, a decaying monument to forgotten horrors, before it was finally consumed by fire. They say the blaze was so intense, so sudden, that it could only be the work of arson. But I knew better. Some things are best left undisturbed, some doors better left unopened. The burn on my hand eventually faded, but the memory of that night remains. A chilling reminder that there are forces at play in this world that we barely comprehend. I still drive, still make my deliveries, but every shadow holds a new meaning. Every creak in the night a whisper of warning. And sometimes, when the wind is right, and the silence stretches just a little too long, I hear them again. Faint whispers, carried on the breeze, a chorus of voices from beyond the veil. They call to me, a chilling reminder of the night I walked into a nightmare and emerged forever changed. They are the voices of the lost, the forgotten, the things that lurk just beyond our perception. They are the voices that remind me always to be careful when voices call.